Welcome all in, everybody, for another edition of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. We are 2 weeks into the WCC schedule. We had some really interesting matchups over the course of the weekend. Obviously, the big game was Washington State and USF, and we'll get to the full recap there. But Oregon State cruised over San Diego. Pepperdine picked up its first WCC win. St. Mary's rolled over Portland. We'll also get into some of the early week game previews as well. So all of that coming. But we are going to start with what was the marquee game, the most important game for both teams really on the schedule to this point. USF traveling to Pullman to take on Washington State. And this one was as advertised. I mean, USF has been in a couple of these games recently, one with Santa Clara and one with USF that was really highly touted, circled on the calendar, and met really all of the expectations I think that we would have thought. It was chippy throughout. This was a physical contest. 51 total fouls were called in this game. And as we do the quick recap, you'll kind of hear why that was indeed a factor. Talked about how going into this game that this really felt like a front court versus back court game. And it really was that case all the way through. Washington State came out. They were the aggressor in the paint. They started game with an 11-0 lead. USF was able to fight back into it. Lawan Watts was a beast inside, 24, 12, and 5, 11 for 13 from the free throw line. Ethan Price right there alongside. He was 9 for 10 from the free throw line, 20 points for him. Plus 18. They were 34 for 41 from the free throw line, plus 18 in free throws made. This was, again, physical contest for Washington State. They really were just the bully. They did a lot of things well in the paint. But USF was not to be outshined in this one as they stormed back after that early 11-0 lead and had a lead at halftime, had a lead deep into the second half, or midway through the second half. Malik Thomas was, as we have seen to this point of the season, is starting to maybe separate himself as the front runner for player of the year. He had 27 points in the first half of that game against the Cougars, 34 for the game, 12 for 21 from the field, 7 for 9 from the free throw line. The only thing that slowed him down was the fact that he got into foul trouble in the second half. Marcus Williams also got in the foul trouble in the first half, and then he ended up fouling out. Malik Thomas fouled out. Barry Wang had 4 fouls. This was a team that was dealing with a lot of, already a shorthanded team, but dealing with foul trouble all throughout, and 2 key guys. And this really put a little bit of the hamper on it, but this does come back to Washington State and just how they really took it to USF, especially inside. They were plus 7 on the rebounding column. It's only the 5th time USF has been out-rebounded this season. They went on a 23-1 run in the second half, 16 unanswered in the middle of that. And USF needed someone to come along for the ride with Malik Thomas, and it just didn't happen. He had 34. Barry Wang had 13, a career high 13 in this game, but Marcus Williams had 4 points, 1 for 9 from the field. Everyone outside of Thomas and Wang shot 30% in this one for USF. 4 for 16 from 3 in the second half. That's just not going to get it done. And this was really just a fun matchup to see. And even once USF got down big in the second half, they did charge back and tried to make at least this game a little bit more interesting toward the end. But a shorthanded USF team, a team that I think was really missing Duito Newberry in this one, was really missing some more of that offensive firepower. They really needed Marcus Williams in this one to play to the level we've seen him over the last few weeks. And that just did not happen in this one. Washington State pulling away in this one. Their 5th quad 1, quad 2 win. They're 5-3 in that window. They're 3-0 in WCC play. 65 in the net. I am still trying to figure this one out. They are 13-3 overall. They're 5-3 versus quad 1, quad 2. And I did look at their best win is Boise State, which is they're at 57 in the net. but none of their losses are bad losses. Again, all three of their losses are quad 1, quad 2. Iowa, Washington, SMU, 58, 91, 41. Still, Washington State feels like a team that should be higher in these rankings, should be putting more of a dent into what we're seeing in a lot of these brackets, what we're seeing in a lot of in the ratings or whatnot. And they're still kind of in neutral, it feels like, after a lot of what they've accomplished. I think they've really been stuck in that 60 range for the last 3 weeks. It just feels like they haven't been able to move that needle enough to kind of get them out of that hump. Now, they're going to get that opportunity this week. They do host Pacific on Thursday, but then the test that could bump them out of that, if they were to get a win, is that they head to the Kennel to take on Gonzaga on Saturday. And we'll get into that matchup later. But you were talking about a game that is going to be a highlight, and obviously a future Pac-12 matchup, a future budding rivalry there in Eastern Washington between the Cougs and the Bulldogs. This is going to be a lot of fun on Saturday, and this is going to be the test. Something if there's any question that Washington State is or is not a tournament team, if they go into the Kennel and get that win, that will, unless they really fall off the cliff here, that's going to cement them as an at-large team. And then it's going to really be up to the rest of the conference to see if they can catch up with the Cougars, because I would also put them in the driver's seat for first place in the conference. And for USF, I mean, this one was tough because it was an opportunity to get a quad 1 win. It slipped away, so they dropped the 2 and 4 in that quad 1, quad 2 window. And they're still looking for another big win. And of course, there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the WCC. We talked a lot about that the last week or so, how there's plenty of quad 1, quad 2 games left. USF has already played 2 of those games. They're 1-1. They had Santa Clara, and then they had Washington State, and they will get Santa Clara again this coming Saturday. Again, another one of those big matchups for the Dons, as they're going to look to, one, complete the sweep against Santa Clara, but also get on the road and get a potential quad 1 victory, as the Broncos are kind of on that cusp of quad 1, quad 2, they're on the cusp of quad 1, quad 2 as a road team. So big matchup for them, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the week, as well as we're going to do another one of the Saturday Lives to preview all of those matchups: Gonzaga, Washington State, and of course USF and Santa Clara. Now, speaking of Gonzaga, they also had an interesting matchup, a game that initially going in was okay. LMU is starting to play well. They've won 6 of 8. They're starting to look good. They beat Oregon State at Gersten Pavilion. This is a team that's starting to feel well. They're starting to feel good. They're looking the part again. And the Zags hadn't looked their best coming in the last week and a half. Yes, they got the win against Portland going into that one, but it's like, okay, well, it's like Portland is not played well really at all this year. Maybe you chalk it up to that. They did do some things well in that game that you can kind of like, okay, maybe they're turning a corner as well. But this was going into this one, this was a LMU squad that has beaten Gonzaga in the last couple of years. They know how to win in that building against that team. Or I guess actually it should have been up at the Kennel they beat them. But it really felt like, okay, this might be a good matchup. This is going to be a good contest. And the Zags just ran away with this one from the get-go, really. It was close for maybe the first 7-8 minutes, and then the Zags just pulled away in this one. They won it 96-68. And Graham Ike was dominant from the get-go. 27 points, 9 rebounds, 12 of 16 from the field. Caliph Battle with 26 of his own, 10 for 12 from the field. Michael Ajayi, who had been missing for quite a while on the offensive end, 15 points, his first double-double, or for his first double-digit game, I should say, since December 14th. And this Gonzaga team really has had its defense turn into its calling card. As much as I talked about the offense, and Ike Battle Ajayi just now, they held LMU to 38% from the field, 32% in that first half to really kind of get them going and jump out to that big lead. They're 19th ranked in Ken Palm in adjusted defense. They are 21st in Bartorvik in defense, 27th with Evan Mia, third in the WCC in opponent's field goal percentage behind Oregon State and St. Mary's, 18th in defensive rebounds in the country, 10th in three-point defense. This is a team that has turned into a defensive-minded team, which is really fascinating and really interesting to see for a team that we all thought that the weakness of this squad was going to be the defense. And clearly that has not been the case this year. The offense has maybe been more inconsistent at times than the defense. We've seen this team travel well. We've seen this group really come up with stops when they've needed them. Even though, yes, there have been some, you could point to the Kentucky game and how that all fell apart in the second half. But also just looking at that this defense, it really hasn't mattered who they've been able to throw in there. They've really done a really good job collectively as a team on the defensive end, especially on the perimeter. Caleb Battle obviously has made a ton of difference on that front, but Ryan Nebahard's been a huge part of that. Dusty Stromer has been a big part of that. And then the physical nature of obviously Ben Gregg and Graham Ike inside has also made that difference. Michael Ajayi has been really good on the defensive end. This Zag team, while we all focus on the offense, and of course we do, and I think they're still 7th in adjusted offense. But the calling card has turned into is the defense, because that is what has carried them to this point, and it has been at times the offense that has lagged behind. But the Zags look really good right now. They looked really good on Saturday. They're going to have 2 games this week. They're at home for both. There's San Diego on Thursday, and of course mentioned they'll have Washington State coming in for that big one on Saturday. LMU on the flip side has really just was handed the short end of the stick here when it comes to the scheduling and what WCC play started for them. They opened with USF, Washington State, Oregon State, Gonzaga. They'll have St. Mary's on Tuesday. They have a supposed break on Saturday with Pepperdine, a Pepperdine team that's playing better right now. And then they have Santa Clara next Thursday. They are hitting all the potential. They're facing the entire best half of the conference right away, which obviously you're going to have to play these teams eventually. But for an LMU squad that was just trying to get back out of their hole, start to play well, just be smacked right back down with this just gauntlet of teams right at the start of WCC play has been rough. They're 1-3 in these games, and they lost 2. Like the USF and Washington State games were very similar. It looks like they were playing well in the first half, and they let it slip away in the second, and they just got boat raced by Gonzaga in the one on Saturday. So they have a chance. They'll be coming back against St. Mary's on Tuesday night in Moraga. And now for this game, this is about rebounding. This is the number one key in this game is going to be the boards, because what has St. Mary's done all year long? They have dominated the boards. They're 10th best. They are the 10th best rebounding margin team in the country at +10. They're the 4th best offensive rebounding team. This is a squad that relies heavily on getting those second chance points, getting those second, third opportunities. And St. Mary's has taken a huge advantage of that. That's how they've really been able to get a lot of these wins. Think about the Nebraska game and how well they played in that one. Now that's wins looking a lot better today as Nebraska's done some damage in the last week or so. Keeping them off keeping them off the boards is going to be really important. Almost the most important thing for LMU to do in this game. Outside of also, you're going to have to the Lions are going to have to shoot well from 3. This is a team that really has not done that well all year long, but they're going to have to have a big night from Will Johnston. Caleb Stone Carrotwell is going to have to be a big factor in this one. You're going to need a big performance out of Javon Porter. It's another all hands on deck game, much like facing Gonzaga. St. Mary's is the same way in that respect, except that this is going to be a team that's going to slow you down. You're going to have to persevere through a lot of these tough stretches, because you're going to have tough stretches against the St. Mary's defense. Because even though St. Mary's early on in the year, there was a question about the defense, and the defense was kind of lagging behind and everything else. Guess what? That team has found its way. They are now second in the WCC in opponent's field goal percentage at 40.1 per game. There's a team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Now, LMU's done a really good job of not turning the ball over, which that part isn't necessarily the issue. But you have to take advantage of the opportunities that you're going to get, because St. Mary's doesn't allow a ton. So when you get a loose ball, you get on the fast break, you get an open three, you're going to have to take advantage of those opportunities, because St. Mary's closes those gaps so quickly. And in this one, this is the unfortunate thing. I think LMU's flaws this season fall into St. Mary's strength. LMU has not rebounded the ball particularly well this season. They haven't shot the ball particularly well this season. And those are two things that St. Mary's does very well. So if you're looking at two things that LMU is going to have to do to try to win this game, win this contest, and steal a victory in Moraga, it's going to have to be keeping the Gales off the glass, getting them in a little bit of foul trouble, I would say, at maybe the guard position, because that's a spot where they are a little on the thin side. It's like after Marshallonis, Ross, and Lewis, like it does start to get a little dicey in the backcourt. The front court is just stacked right now for St. Mary's. Like you go, if Saxon gets in foul trouble, Wessels and McKeever are sitting right behind him, and they've both done really well this season. So if I'm looking at this game, thinking about what this could end up looking like, if LMU can keep St. Mary's around on the rebounding column and they can shoot decently from three, I think they're going to stick around longer in this game than many might think, especially after the Gonzaga loss. But they can do it. Like we've seen this team do it, and this team has talent. If you look at a team that maybe a little bit more defense first, and Oregon State is a good example, they took it to them. And now that might have been LMU's best game of the season. They put it all together. The offense was there. The defense was there. They did all the little things right. If they have that sort of performance, they're going to have a shot against St. Mary's. If it looks more like what we saw against USF or Washington State or Gonzaga, St. Mary's is going to run away with this one, and this is going to be win number 4 for St. Mary's, and they'll take over first place in the conference. Now, down the road is on Thursday is going to be the other big game, and that's Oregon State and Santa Clara. These two teams, they both need it, right? Both of their seasons, as far as the NCAA tournament goes, and their at-large status is on life support. And they're both in the 70s. They are in desperate need of a marquee win. And I don't necessarily think that for either of these teams, this counts as a marquee win. For Santa Clara, this would count. I believe this would be a quad 1 win quad 2 right now. And for Oregon State, this still at the moment counts as a quad 1 because Santa Clara is still sitting in that top 75, but barely are they sitting in that top 75. Both of them need this to help their status in the WCC. Both of them need this to make sure that they don't have to necessarily beat one of the other top dogs in the conference. A loss here puts more pressure on, say, like Oregon, especially Oregon State, that they're going to have to beat St. Mary's, USF, Washington State, and Gonzaga. Any level of combination, they're going to have to really do well the rest of the way, especially with that LMU loss hanging on them. Any sort of backtracking is going to really hurt this squad, and especially if you're losing to the team that is at the bottom of that top 6 in the league, as Santa Clara is right now. That's the team you can't lose to. You're going to have to make sure you're getting that one and then doing more. If you lose that, it makes it a necessity that you now have to beat probably either St. Mary's or Gonzaga, if not both of them, to have any shot at getting that large. Now, as far as like getting back into a rhythm, both of these teams have kind of gotten, like Santa Clara's gotten, I think, into more of a rhythm at this stage. They've won, I believe it's 6 of their last 7 games. Oregon State did get reset against San Diego. They looked much better in that game. Michael Rataj looked a lot better, 18 and 10 for him. Parsifala also looked good in that one. And this is going to be a contrast of styles for these two squads. This is going to be Santa Clara's offense against Oregon State's defense. Oregon State has the best opponent field goal percentage in the WCC. That has been the case basically all season long. We did not see that for a few games there right at the beginning of WCC play, but it was much better against San Diego. And they're going to need it against a Santa Clara team that scores 81 a game, which is third in the WCC just behind Washington State. And the Santa Clara's versatility in that backcourt is going to be huge. I mean, Carlos Stewart has continued to just play really well over the last month or so. He had 20 points in the game the other night. Obviously, Adama Alpha-Ball, Elijah Mahi, all are contributing in various ways. And this it just gives them so many different looks. Santa Clara has a ton of weapons on this offense, not only just in the backcourt, but of course, like even in the front court. One to keep an eye on, Johnny O'Neal has continued to play well over the last couple weeks. He had 9 points, 10 rebounds against San Diego the other night, 20 points in the game against USF last week. So he is starting to come alive. He wasn't playing all that well early on, but he started to play well in the last couple weeks. For Oregon State, it really is about that big physical front line of theirs. It's about Michael Rataj. It's about Parsifala. It's about Marsh. Getting those guys going early is going to really be helpful. And a key to that is the health of Christoph Tilley. He missed Santa Clara's last game against Pacific, so there is a little bit of a concern that he might be unavailable for the game against Oregon State. If he is in, I think Santa Clara is going to be in a good spot as he has continued to play. He's been so much better this year than a season ago, and he just continues to get better and better. But if he can't go in this contest, this really pulls the advantage to Oregon State, to the Beavers. That I'm really concerned about that. Like, I want to see Santa Clara at full strength so we could see this battle back and forth. But if he's unavailable, I'm going to lean Oregon State in this contest. I'm going to lean their direction because they're physical. They're going to get inside. They're going to force you to the foul line. And they've done it. That's really up and down the roster. Like, DeMarco Minor is going to be a part of that too. Like, he's going to get to the basket. And if you don't at least have some more of that rim protection back there, which Santa Clara really isn't that great at to begin with, but if your big man is not there and you're relying on some of the rest of the front line, I just don't see that being an advantage for Santa Clara. Or, like, I think that's just going to be one more thing that the Beavers can exploit in that contest. So again, like, these two teams both need what's going to happen on Thursday. And really, whichever one of them does come out of that is going to feel obviously a whole hell of a lot better about their chances of still holding on to any at-large hopes. But I will say, even if it's still the second week of January, if you lose this game, if you're one of these squads, it really feels like the only hope you have to get to the NCAA tournament is going to be winning in Vegas, which we know how difficult that is, and especially for the Oregon State people, the format of the WCC tournament makes it that much more difficult because of the top 2 seeds advancing to the semis, the 3-4 seeds advancing to the quarters. And if you're in that 5-6 range, you are having to play to win the tournament. It's 4 games in 4 nights. And not to say that obviously it's not possible. Oregon State is actually kind of familiar with that scenario just a few years ago, but putting yourself in that situation with teams like Washington State, USF, St. Mary's, and Gonzaga potentially in front of you makes the task just that much harder to overcome. All right. So that'll do it for this episode of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. So Tuesday night LMU at St. Mary's, like that's one. I'm going to lean St. Mary's. Wednesday we do have San Diego at Gonzaga. Thursday Pacific at Washington State, Oregon State at Santa Clara, Portland at USF. I will be hosting a live on Saturday morning to go over all of the matchups on that day, and we'll also do a little bit of a recap on the games from Thursday and the rest of the early part of the week. And guess TBD, but stay tuned. Follow along on social media at unofficial WCC pod to make sure you find out all the details. And of course, subscribe on YouTube and keep track of when the live will be coming. Still Saturday, 9 a.m. That is the plan. So hopefully I will see a lot of you there on Saturday morning. All right, well, that'll do it. Thanks a lot, everybody, and I will catch you later.